All right, so phase one cleanup or wrap up, we call it either one. We're just kind of we want to go through and clean up our code and kind of follow dry principles and KISS principles and just go through and make it more maintainable. We don't want to add for this cleanup pass. We don't really want to add new features, but just stabilize and do some good code hygiene uh, to wrap up the phase one. You've all got a per pair reading and slide deck in your forum post. The slide deck isn't quite there yet. I'm in the middle of editing those now, but they're basically will serve as a self-serve workflow for you guys to work through and do merges on the JIE repo. I have opened it up so you guys can do merges, but code review is required. So code reviews will need to be done when you have merges. I'm going to try to be hands off. It's kind of just to strengthen your muscles a little bit around the self-serve workflow when you get into your own agents and doing code review. So this deck right here is the crosspair view of the slide decks I'll share, how the work coordinates across pairs, what ships when, and what's a short list of things that will genuinely wait for planning week. So DB changes to the source of truth database. It's on Azure. Um, there's a couple other things that we want to keep until I get back on planning week, and we'll apply those changes then as I do a final eval. So just a quick orientation to get everyone online. Closeout week is this week, so that will close out on Friday. Bridge weeks are when I'm out. That's the 18th through the 31st, and then we'll start the planning week on the 1st. So, okay, two things. There's two things here before we dive into mechanics on the stakes and outcome. We'll talk about the stakes first. Phase one evaluation isn't final until cleanup lands. I told you I wanted you guys to do your findings doc that I'll use as part of like the grading evaluation that I'll pair those together to share with Peter. But I don't want to do that actually until I get back. So during the planning week, I'll do the grading evaluation because I want to take a chance for these cleanup paths to happen. Not doing it won't hurt like the evaluation or like hurt anyone negatively, but it's just that code hygiene and maintenance is a good thing to add in as a skill that we could kind of polish off on the wrap up and have in the evaluation. So I wanted to take the time to be able to do that, and it serves that purpose as a teaching learning moment, but also gets the job intelligence engine as a example for phase two agents. Does that make sense to everyone? So so basically, I'll run my. I get back from my vacation during the planning week. Probably day one, I'll run the automated evaluations that I have for code review in the Discord bot, scanning of conversations. Then I'll plug that into the report that I generate to give to Peter. And then I do human review and add my own 2 cents as well. So it's not just a blind agent giving feedback, but I use it to kind of collect everything together and then edit from there. And this will be like a final review, so it'll reflect the full phase, one arc, not just like the last week. Okay, so this is the closeout week. This week, each pair has a jump start. What are like one or two quick wins that practice the cohort self-service workflow on something small. Um, Paradig's jump start is do a diagnostic on issue 359, not the fix itself. and we'll look at that more in a minute. And then the bridge weeks, 518 through 531. These are the work-based learning weeks, but they'll be capped at 10 hours per week. These is where the priority zero fixes will land. So you'll ship the cohort self-serve, you'll branch, you'll do the make sure CI passes, assign a peer review for somebody. Just pick one of your devs on the team. If you don't assign somebody, what happens is it'll sit there, no one will wait to pick it up. So when you open a PR on the right up on the right hand side, you can assign a dev. Just pick someone, and you can pick a couple people, and whoever grabs it first. But basically, just when you're doing your reviews, try to spread it out. Like if you see someone's assigned on some other code review, don't make sure the same person isn't getting assigned over and over for reviews. But once they do a review and it checks off, then you can merge it into development. And if accidents happen or things get overlooked or things get overwritten that shouldn't, don't worry. I mean, do worry about it. But if it gets overlooked and that happens, don't worry about it. We could easily do a revert, and I could do merges during the planning week. But I really want you guys to get the practice, and if mistakes or complications most likely will arise, and when they do, you guys to try to fix them and kind of get that muscle memory down to handle those kind of things as part of the layer of work. And so I want to give you guys the opportunity to do that this week, with me being available to ask me if something doesn't look right, but also while I'm on vacation, I want you to do that as well. And then when I get back, we'll do regression tests and smoke tests and update the database, and then see where we're at, like comparing the eval metrics from before or after, and if anything broke, we'll have to kind of trace the code back and find out where it's at. But if not, it's a huge win, and we'll be nice and in a really nice spot going into phase 2.
When doing reviews for other pairs, should we look into what would you say the critical things we should look for apart from like following what the fix should be? Is
We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah,
okay, okay, okay.
yeah, we'll talk about reviews, and maybe I'll even create a little like run book for how to be like systematic in a review, like things you should check off rather than just saying LGTM and approving it. But using your agents, using Cursor for code review is really helpful. It really speeds it up, and it does a pretty good job as long as it knows what to check for, right? So one thing I find, I've done a lot of these reviews over the past, couple months, and one of the things I found is that you got to tell the agent explicitly not to trust the markdown, because even like let's say like, and it's nothing against you guys, but like let's say the agent generates the markdown for the PR description, and then does code changes. Oftentimes I find there's drift between the two. So you don't want to take like PR descriptions at face value. So if someone says fixes, issue, and the markdown, that's not code review. That's just trusting what they say and checking it off. And the agent will do that to try to save context or token usage or whatever. So you got to tell it, do an actual code review, look at the code. Don't trust the PR description when it says fixes. Let's verify it, empirically. And then then it will actually, pull the branch, run tests, look at outputs, access data from the database. Then it does the actual heavy lifting to look at it rather than just, saying it looks good. But that's one thing I've really found that is a shortcoming of using it. You really just got to be explicit in what you want it to do for review. And if you do that, it takes a little longer for it to respond back, but it does it much more thoroughly. So when I get back on planning week, hours will jump to 28 hours a week instead of the 10. But so if some of this work does bleed over, because I do want you guys to take it easy for the next couple of weeks. I want you to have a break too. Don't feel like you have to rush to get all these things done. But when we get to 28 hours a week, there'll still be some flux because I'll be planning with the Ritu for phase two sprint, like first couple week sprints, and the priority order for the agent she wants actually built. That will all be kind of in flux still for the first couple days I'm back. So continuing this work during that time when the hours open back up as well is kind of expected. So don't feel like you have to get this all done in the next couple days. This is going to be the rest of this week plus the next 3 weeks, and I'm just giving it to you all up front. So when I'm gone, no one's twiddling their thumbs and wondering and wishing they had something to do, but it didn't have a direction on where to go or what to do.
We're using the same repo, right?
Yep, still in JIE. Yep, Java
Yeah,
Intelligence
okay.
Engine. Yep, yeah, we're still working there. Yep, I know I did post the bridge and the learning the WFDOS reading kind of before the post I just did, but really going into that is kind of after this work's done or like during the vacation time because you'll have plenty of time to do both these. Looking at this slide right now, it's a kind of just an overview of what's landed and what's coming and kind of a expected estimated hourly cleanup work for the whole cohort. And basically using the agents, I'd estimate about 27 hours total of work here. And so you got this week 20 hours each over the break essentially, and then 28 hours the following planning week. So I think that's more than enough time. It's more than 3 times the amount of time that's predicted, estimated here. So we should be able to knock all these things out. One thing that will happen is, merge conflicts will happen, or people will edit the same files, and you'll probably feel a little tension trying to get those things merged between each other. But you just got to communicate in Discord and talk those things through and get them resolved. And I really want you guys to take active steps in doing that because it's really something that a skill that when you walk away from here at the end of phase two, I want you to be comfortable with. There'll be some growing pains. I'm sure it's fine. Everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes, still too at this part of the process, but you'll get better at noticing them and fixing them. So yeah, so Anhill and Fabian, you got about 4 hours of cleanup. Phase one overall is pretty solid work. You have 10 closed issues recently. The monolith split is the big ticket item. And one of these things what I did when I was doing this review over the weekend is I just basically set an agent for each pair's work. So like the work you guys did, I went and found get blame of everything you touched, and then I audited it side by side in the four pair groups to see where code patterns are repeated, so we could dry our code up. Don't follow the don't repeat yourself. So if there's replicated code, there's recommendations to go use it or use it from somewhere else or lift it out into a common file where it's shared between files, because there's I won't say a whole lot, but it shows up quite a bit where because we're working on these different branches that there'll be a helper function that was created by 2 separate groups but does the identical thing. And we just want to try to clean some of that up for maintainability. And if a bug comes up, it's not pointing at multiple methods that do the same thing, and it's one method works fine and one doesn't, and we're wondering why. Because buried within our code base, there's a separate helper method that's being used that we didn't expect. So yeah, you'll just Anhill and Fabian, looking at this, pair D's resolver pattern, company resolver pattern looks good here. And in the reading, these things there's this high level here in the reading that I just shared in Discord. It goes into this in more detail, and I'll have it broken down in slides so it's easier to skim through and see stuff. I got 4 slide decks. I'm in the middle of. I just edited pair A's. It's ready, but I want to go through them all, and I'll drop them all in those threads when I get done after this meeting. So yeah, Fatima and Nestor, you got about 5.5 hours probably worth of work to do. the infrastructure is mature. The standout is the um, I'm calling here is a candidate for P0. It's not really a priority 0; it's a priority 1, but it's something that's really concerning. So you want to fix this first. But basically, it's this the silent fallback, and it's in the same family of issues for 359 that Pair D is working on. But basically, what it's laid out in the reading. But you don't want this to be a silent fallback. We want to either fix it or throw an error when it falls back, or signal in logs rather than just failing silently. Because especially if we use this as an example code base, anything where we fail silently, we do not want to do. We want to know immediately that something's not going to work correctly, and because we don't want our other agents failing silently as a pattern. And the mistake actually for this was introduced to the project very early on. It was in the architecture that me and Ritu put together, just to be transparent. One of the rules was that in production, we don't want people having exceptions on their screen, right? But the agent interpreted that as, oh, let me fail silently everywhere. So it's been really a pain in the butt trying to track that down and get it to shift its paradigm view on that, even though I've done it explicitly in instructions and constraints on what not to do. I still see it coming up. So it's really important that we try to find and isolate those things. So even if you do your own audit of your work and you're looking for things, one of the key things to look for everyone is just where you have code that fails silently. We should not do that. Now, if we get that all fixed and there's an actual issue during runtime of the code and we're getting this ugly error, we should handle it correctly, but it shouldn't fail silently. For Brian and Emilio, you have about 2.5 hours. I know this last couple of weeks we really been scrutinizing the eval harness that you guys have been doing, so it really came back with the cleanest audit and out of the code bases. You have in the reading there's a risk section with regressions, subsection 7, and basically your task have 0 risk or regression happening, so it's pretty stress free. The others, there is low to medium risk on it causing regressions when you do the changes, so it's really important, and it's laid out in the readings that when you make the changes, don't do them as monolithic changes in one PR. Open a PR for each issue that you're solving, and then fix it. Then do evaluations and smoke tests to make sure that it's healthy and that it's actually a good change, and then open your PR for review to get it merged in. And anywhere there's possible regressions like that, that's where the code review is important. So you go through and someone else does the same things on a different machine, and make sure that they get the same quality results back. Juan and Enrique, it looks like you guys have about the largest budget of hours for fixes, but I think it's just the way things landed as far as how the files are touching each other. But the issue 359 on the intent.py, that there's some correctness bugs. They're both marked as priority 0, so those need to be worked on first. And there's a database indexes that need to be applied just for faster searching and just to make it, just to optimize it, make it better. We won't apply those database changes until I get back. I want to be part of that, and that's kind of, we could do it at the tail end. But it's just part of the work stream where when I was using Git annotations to see who was working on what, this fell under you guys. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's kind of going back and fixing their own code. So This is basically it's a start slide. Each pair gets a jump start this week. These are 1 or 2 quick wins. I know we have the priority order, but these are like really small and trivial changes that will be big wins. So like for Anhill and Fabian, like priority 6, the retie jitter, it's laid out in the reading. But really, what that is when, just to explain jitter real quick, if you don't. Do you know what jitter is? Retry jitter? I don't want to mansplain it if you know already, but I'll do it for the sake of the curriculum. Retry jitter is basically when it fails, like we get 429s on our APIs and we're rate limited, and we want to retry, but let's say we're doing it in a batch process, and and in parallel, like we're doing things asynchronous, and we get a 429 error and it retries. Right now in taxonomy.py, it just waits a set amount of time and retries again. But if you have asynchronous threads doing that, basically they're all going to retry at the same time, and it will fail again because it's all hitting it and it's exceeding the limit that it was before. So every retry is just going to be a chain of fail 429 errors. So what you want to do is jitter essentially is you add a randomized amount of time between like 0.1 to 0.3 seconds to the end of each try. So that way, when things are running asynchronous, they don't all try to access the API at the exact same time again on the failure. So jitter just kind of makes that stagger a bit, and it's just so you don't get the 429s. And it's really just a one line of code change to where you just basically set a value last delay, set like a delay value, and then do a little, random function to get like 0.1 to 0.3 seconds back, and then add that to the wait time in the code line, in the function that's doing that call. So it's an easy fix, but it's actually common practice to use jitter on retry. And then one of our biggest wins, this is looking at pair Bs, but overall too, is documentation. So there's kind of a new like paradigm of looking at code, right? Before, you wouldn't want like your code cluttered with comments. It just makes it verbose, and people really like one line comments, or maybe like a doc string comment within the Python. You use a triple quotes and you have that one thing. So if you use a tool to look up methods, you can see this description. But we basically want to, this ties into pair Cs too as well. They already have a lot of code that's really stable and a good example for some of the code they've built. So we actually want to mark with comments code that's an example. We'll mark it with an exemplar, but we'll also want to document things in messaging above. So using the agents to go in and give description of what it does to do the documentation in line with the code is really good, especially if we point our cursor or Claude agent, whichever one we may be using, back at JIE to find patterns and reuse the patterns there. It will actually read those comments when it looks at the file. It'll make it much smarter about how to use functions where. So, and that's not you going and typing it out manually or trying to figure out what it does. It's basically just going in file by file on the code that's listed in your reading and making sure everything has documentation. And that's a common practice when you're wrapping up a project, to go in and fill in documentation. And it's a really big win for this AI native first approach. And it's a really easy lift using the agents to do it. So it's something we want to do. But we want to get the bugs fixed first, like the P0s, P1s, and 2s. We want to get those all fixed first, so that way the comments actually reflect what it does, and there's no drift. And Juan and Enrique, for you guys, basically, don't apply the fix yet, just diagnose it. diagnose it for 359. Basically, just go through and run it and see that if you set, I know we set the variable for the heuristic to 0, so we can just circumvent this. But if you go in and you set it to 1, you should get back empty role names when this runs, and that's what you want to fix. But you want to isolate why it's happening and come up with a fix. Basically, is the goal. But work through that like in plan mode and come up with a fix. And the issue already has proposed solutions in there as well. But really, just take one whole session, clean session that's not working across different issues and problems, and focus solely on that. So it's staying focused on that and not looking across too many things. So for the bridge week while I'm out on vacation, this is where most of the cleanup will actually land. You'll work in asynchronous. You're capped at 10 hours a week. The cohort self-serve merge gate is, you need to have the CI green on development, so tests and linter passes, plus one approving peer review, enforced by branch protection. So basically, if you try to merge without review, it'll say it's blocked. It needs a approved reviewer. And so basically, you got to assign a reviewer. That reviewer has to come in and do a review and mark it as good. Then it could be merged. One of the things where the coordination kind of lacks in this is that, in my experience, is like the reviewer will mark it good, and then it's kind of falls on the dev that opened the PR to come back and merge it, like hit the merge button. With us, if you do a review and it looks good and you're legitimately, it looks solid, just go ahead and merge right after your review. If not, and you feel like, there's a lot here, I don't really know if issues come up, I want the other person to handle it, ping them in Discord general chat. Just, hey, I did that, go ahead and merge it. And then, if they merge, and 95% of the time it's going to merge no problem, because we have the branch protections in place, or the CI and linter has to pass. It flags for merge conflicts, and then you have to have the review on top of it. So everything should merge cleanly at that point. But there's always those, edge scenarios where something happens that you wouldn't expect. And always make sure you're merging development back into your branch. If it sits open for a while and things land in development, make sure you're putting development back in, so any changes there, you're not reverting. So basically, you guys will do stand-up tomorrow. We'll talk about this a little more on another slide, but there's a lot of on-typed, even though we're trying to be strict and use Pydantic models, through the audits for all 4 pairs, there's consistently on-types being used. So like dictionaries were being used instead of like a Pydantic model. And that's one of the big lifts we want to do. So tomorrow we'll talk about our strategy for that, because there has to be coordination. So that's one thing I definitely want to kind of help you guys get in sync with, and that will be the main topic tomorrow, is just basically discussing our strategy for converting on-typed data structures into typed data structures, and we all can follow the same system across our fixes. So that way everything lands cleanly. 2 things generally wait for me to come back. It's the Azure database deployment, adding those indices, and the cohort-wide convention finalization if it didn't happen before my vacation. Everything else should ship and be merged into development during the 2 bridge weeks. And so our soft target for 531, it's if you guys get about 75% of this work done that's in the readings, 25% of it could easily be picked up in the planning week, because there's that flux. So I would say like if you get 50, 60%, like you get a little over halfway through this stuff this couple weeks, and you just want to take it easy for a week and kind of knock it all out in a couple days, and you could do that too, but yeah, just that's kind of how I'd spread the workload out. Let's try to get 50 to 75% done by the 31st as a soft target. And yeah, it's so if one thing to watch for is when you're doing reviews is really there should be output as part of the review for regression. So the evals or test running should be part of in the description, like shared. And if it's like a file output, it should be mentioned in the description and a link to that file so they can open it and look at it. If that's not done, reject the PR and request it. So that way they could come in if it's forgotten that it's added to the PR. That's one of the requirements. Is
Could
regression.
you repeat that? It kind of lagged on my end.
Yeah. So for review, regression checks should be done. So if eval, like if it's something that will affect eval, it should be mentioned in the PR description. If it's like something small, it could just be mentioned there that it was done. But if it's a file that's actually committed to the PR description should link to that file. If that's not part of the PR, I would request. You could, when you do reviews, you could request changes or approve, or reject outright. So I would just request changes and ask for that regression check, right? So that should be part of every review. That's not just documentation. Right, so if it's just adding comments, obviously you don't need a regression check because it's not changing any logic, But if you're refactoring methods and our underlying logic, regression checks should be done, smoke tests should be run, and the output of that should be shared explicitly in the PR description to let people know that's been done. Or else, inadvertently, I'll run it when I get back from vacation, and there might be a bunch of errors. I'll have to track it down, or it might be it might be an error that's just a small error, but it trickles into every other process for the agents. So it could be like it really screws things up. It's a small thing, or it pollutes the database with a bunch of weird stuff. So you want to make sure that you check. So when you do checks. And if you have to, this is kind of a generalization, but basically, if it's a fix for like job extraction, or you're getting jobs, or you have to do some kind of data generation off the data job posts, just do a sample of like 10 jobs. Don't try to do it across the whole database. I know locally I did the fixture updates, and there actually is. I think over 500 pending jobs are just raw ingested jobs. So if you have synced your database locally, you should have those pending jobs in there. And so you could just do a sample of like on 10 jobs or 5 jobs just to see the output and make sure everything's working like you expect it when it runs through the through the loop of whatever you're fixing. That's generalized because it's kind of varies for each scope of work, and I think it generalizes well. Does that make sense? So just make sure people have the output of their tests and smoke tests to say that it has passed, for clarification. And if they don't request changes.
Yep. Thank you.
So this is the operational table, what each pair will ship during closeout in the bridge, and what queues for planning a week. So pair A, everything is in self-serve. The priority 3 monolith split waits on a cohort meetup with pair D to walk through the resolver pattern, but it doesn't wait on me. So usually I would come in and resolve things between you. This is where I want you to build that muscle. And so Anhil and Fabian, you'll work with Juan and Enrique on adopting the resolver pattern for a company resolver, because you both have duplicate code that essentially does the same thing. So getting together and making sure that you're just lifting this out, and it's included in the reading in more detail. It was actually like a solution laid out to you. But these are, this is just following the dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. So we have this identical method that's doing the same thing, and really we should just consolidate it down into one as a cleanup pass. Yeah, and so for Fatima and Nestor, just the silent fallback fix is first thing. Do this, ship this first. Then the priority one is the SQL update unification. Um, and you want to do this after pair one's fix here. You could do it before. Nothing's really defined like as a dependency here. Like there's not really anything hard defined. But if they merge this first and then you work on yours for this, it'll be cleaner and easier to check because there is some things that come downstream from the resolver into your code that you're touching. And then, yeah, Brian and Emilio, you have a pretty short list because the code looks pretty good as is. It's a short list. It's all self-serve. The sequencing matters with pair B on their promotion file that they're working on here. So basically, I'd ask that you guys just because your list is shorter, when they get to this, just help this coordinate and make sure that anything they need, just make sure you guys work together to make sure you're not blocked and you're not just overwriting each other's code blindly. Essentially, communicate in general chat and Discord. Essentially, after you read through your readings.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and then Juan and Enrique, your priority 0 is just the intent fix, and then the database indices drafted, and merge the development. That could all happen, but the migration I will do when I get actually applying it to the database. We'll do when I get back. That way, if something does happen and I'm on vacation, it doesn't just like fry people's database if they have to like do updates. Just stick with the data as is. Part of the workflow, if you read in the reading, is that locally you could do it fine because we actually take a snapshot and write all fixtures before we do any changes. So you can always tell the agent to roll it back and load up all the snapshot of fixtures to revert the database to how it was. Right now, it's kind of clunky how we do that. To be honest, it's not the best. We could use Alembic. It's like a version control, pretty much on top of SQL Alchemy. That I did open as an issue to where we want to refactor that in if we can. But if we use that, then it would just be a lot cleaner, and we have like version control of our state of our database and data as well, kind of built in, without having to do it from scratch. So this is the cross-pair sequencing. There's 3 places where pairs touch the same file. And so I wanted to call that out. And tomorrow we'll talk about the Pydantic convention decision. But basically the SOC and AICS dry consolidation. First, Anhil and Fabian, you'll want to work on that. That's your priority 1 item. But like I said earlier, you're just consolidating down these methods, so you're using one method rather than 2 separate methods that do the same thing. And it should be basically be this shared file here. So read through your readings, coordinate to make sure it's good, and then request a merge into development once you guys can cherry pick or work in your separate branches outside of development, and then just merge that final branch with both things into development if you want. Like you guys are going to be coordinating development, so naming conventions, what branches are what, tied to what PRs. That's kind of on you. Like I like the naming convention that I've been following. You guys can follow it too, but you don't have to ask me for approval on that because you guys are working yourself. So it's whatever flags you, makes it easier for you. Yeah, so pair C's priority 1 lands first. Pair B's SQL update unification follows. So yeah, Brian and Emilio, if this does make it easier and you just fix this first, like today or tomorrow, it's 45-minute fix. Um, Look at the reading, see which one it is. It's shorthanded here just to the priority one, but it's actually listed out in the reading. Just go do that one first, and then ping them in their thread or in general that it's done, so they can know to do this. I think you could do them independently, but it'll just make it easier for merging if you get yours done first, and then they you cherry pick that into their branch and then continue the work.
Okay.
And then the company resolver pattern. Juan Enrique, you had a company resolver that checked out and seemed like a good example to use. And Angel and Fabian, your code was good, but it's just a monolithic, so you want to split it up. But one of the split ups could, when you split it up into different functions and like common functions for this issue, basically you could reuse their company resolver for part of it rather than creating your own function when you split up the monolithic code base. And again, this is called out in detail in the reading. I did read through the readings. I did a couple passes on them in fresh sessions just to make sure things were complete. I plan on evaluating because I am looking across a large section of code, so sometimes it incorrectly points at things. So I am going to continue reviewing those throughout the week, and if I find any glaring errors, I'll let you guys know and update them in the reading. But it's like 90% of the way there. Like even if it's wrong, like as long as you're doing thorough stuff and looking at it, you'll find it, and then you could tell me I was wrong. But it should be really close to aligning across the whole code base. So yeah, this last thing here is the Pydantic JSON-B convention. This is cohort wide. Like a lot of times when we're touching extracted intelligence or other things, we use dict instead of actually Pydantic models. I think in the reading it says like use Pydantic models or some other option. I'm saying use Pydantic models, not the some other option, just because that'll stay consistent with our code base. We have Pydantic models everywhere already, and if we ever need to plug LangFuse into anything for some reason, that's what it supports is Pydantic. So it makes it really easy to plug in traces if we use Pydantic models. So you guys just communicated general chat. Please, no pair-to-pair side channels. Don't open DMs to each other. Keep it transparent in the chat. I'll just be transparent. Also, like the activity here, I want to give people opportunities to communicate more in Discord because the soft skills and communication are really big things. If you look at job postings, that's one of the big things they're looking for, and I want to be able to give an honest assessment. A lot of you've been pretty quiet, so it's hard to give an assessment of communication skills when it's quiet. I want to make you guys look as good as I possibly can, as shiny in the best light. But doing this cleanup pass and really strengthening up at the end with some solid communication in Discord will make my job easier. To do that, I won't have to. I can actually point to references. Quantifiable references for communication rather than just say, oh, they did a really good job, so. So these are just the three things that wait for planning week. The Azure Source of Truth Postgres deploys. So like Azure right now matches my database, which I have in Claude and the agents. I clearly defined it as a source of truth for databases. So if there's any divergence, I run all the evaluation and backfills like throughout the last few weeks where we've done fixes. Like I know that's all there, so it's the source of truth, and then I just mirror that to Azure. So basically, I want to make sure we keep that same integrity as we do these fixes. So That's why we're waiting on that. But yeah, so the index migrations that you're doing, the merge to development during bridge weeks is fine. Uh, the the Alembic upgrade head against Azure waits for me. So that means basically using Alembic will upgrade the head, and I'll do that when I get back. And then the cohort-wide convention decisions, basically is the pydantic, JSON B, and then the extraction metadata typing. So there's a lot of metadata, and it's also untyped. It's just, you know, raw types, and we actually want to define the type and use that. So, and the big reason, even though it's working fine, we want to do this so that way when we in phase 2, if we point our agent at this as an example, we want to set a good example for it to follow. And so we want it to type everything. In Ritu's code, nothing's typed, right? But it's like horrible because if there's a bug, it's really hard to figure out what's going on. So I did a pass on that already. So things are typed now, but originally they weren't. And I pulled out a lot of duplicate stuff into a common layer. So that functions and base classes that are used, like for agent, for example, are used throughout. But I would take it even a step further, and we used our ABC abstract class for our base agent and JIE. We want to make sure that aligns on WFDOS as well. We want to keep things consistent across our org, where possible, not just across our project. It will make hopping back and forth from the projects easier. It'll make pointing agents at them for examples easier because there'll be one-to-one matches on the fundamentals. And that's what we're really striving for in this cleanup pass, is to get as close as we can. Will we get 100%? I doubt it. It'd be amazing if we did. But we could definitely get closer and kind of have that goal in mind as we're working, is to keep that maintenance and hygiene going as a continual improvement. So I really want to try to stay off my computer during my vacation. Just, not even game or anything. Just get some break from the computer, spend time with my kid and my family. So if there's any cross-pair major refactor sequencing decisions where you guys couldn't operate in good faith and get it resolved, and I come back and see that, that's fine. It's not a failure. It's just something I'll handle when I get back. So if you generally don't know, and I do mention me in Discord, and if I do get on, I will respond, but I'm not going to invest hours into investigating stuff during my vacation. I'll maybe give you tips on how to go find it yourself and fix it, if I can, or I'll just be like, I will resolve it when I get back, type of thing. So, but everything else will ship via cohort self-serve during the closeout plus bridge weeks. So basically, you'll have be doing code reviews of each other, assigning them, make sure that there's documentation that's either pointed to in a file for eval outputs to actually quantify if there's regressions or not. And then if that's not there, reject them. Our request changes and request that. If you think it should have it and they think it doesn't, you could lift it up to me. So if you reject it, say you need this regression test, and someone says, I don't need that for what I did, and it looks like there's code changes, it should probably be ran for safety's sake. So just run it if there's code changes. If it's documentation, don't worry about it. If it's just like comments being changed or something like that, don't worry about it. But anything that touches actual code should be updated. So this is the verification. So on the merges. So per refactor verification is the merge bar. The Azure database stays untouched. You could modify your database as much as you want. You could always, if you break it, you could always just reseed with the fixtures, sync fixtures, and PG C database scripts. That will get you back to where in sync with where Azure's at. Yeah, so you'll want CI green on development, one approving peer review, and for the priority zeros, a regression script output in the PR description. So this is the slide you look at. This is slide 10. And this is laid out in the readings as well too. But you'll basically want to have these laid out. And then the database protection is actually defined in the CloudMD at the repo. So, and the cursor does look at CloudMDs. So hopefully with those layers there, we haven't had any big database snafus other than actually flawed logic in the ingestion and processing loop. It has never been anything that someone's actually done. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about that happening. But yeah, basically this is your verification bar. I don't have these slides shared. I can share these slides, but this stuff will also be in your individual slide decks for each pair. I'm going to share with you because rather than make one slide deck to give to everyone, it had a lot of stuff in it. So I wanted just to make really isolated slide decks that focused on your stuff. There'll be a lot of crossover, but you guys should be fine still. And we're just about done. I have a couple more slides. Here, just a Discord async workflow during bridge weeks. You could use general for like general just checking in. If it, in our discipline in the past has messaged people in their thread, but I just really want to be open and everyone to be able to see it. So just using general is good. So that way, if it's in another someone else's thread, then the whole group might not see it and be in the dark about something. And just as you're doing this self-serve workflow, I want everyone to be mindful of what's going on around them in the code base. And of course, we won't have meetups during the vacation time. If you guys want to use that time and just do scrums, I encourage it. You don't have to, but I encourage you guys getting together and just, sharing what you're working on, what's coming next, what your blockers are, and looking at your slide decks and readings and referencing any kind of collaboration that may need to happen. So that way you have a touch point each day, even if it's a 15 to 30 minute check-in. They happen in like devs do that all the time. There's always those meetings where, you do daily check-ins. Even if it's something exciting, you just kind of say what I'm working on, if there's blockers, if any, and what files you plan on touching. So someone else has the opportunity to say like, hey, wait a minute, don't touch that file, I'm doing that. Or, when you do that, let me know because I got something I plan on after that. Just so everyone has context about what everyone's doing. So when I get back on the first, this is what it kind of will look like in order. I'll audit the cleanup work that landed during the bridge weeks, right? Then I'll deploy the pending Azure DB index migrations. And then we'll have our first official Monday meetup. And it will just be a meetup. It won't be a kickoff. We'll still keep the Friday kickoff, Thursday wrap-up format. But just coming back here, basically, we'll meet up, kind of see where everyone's at. Make sure like the pedantic convention landed, and that's why I really want to get. I don't want it to be a what if situation. We'll get it done this week. We'll talk about it tomorrow and get everything dialed in, so that way it can actually be. We can ensure it's implemented over my time off. And then, if there's any leftover coordinating between the crosspair sequences that I mentioned in the previous slides, we'll get that figured out. Basically, if there's anything that's open that needs to be addressed, we'll work on it together when I get back. And then I'll work with Ritu on getting the Sprint 1 backlog drafted for Phase 2. And then, the kickoff slides for that upcoming Friday to start off the Sprint 1 for Phase 2. And here's just a snapshot of the 5 risks to monitor during the self-serve workflow. The mitigations are all the same shape. Basically, to mitigate risk, have clear communication and general Discord. Communicate what's going on. I encourage the meetups. I'm not going to cancel those meetings, so anyone could go in and start them, I do believe. or you could just hop into general when you get the DB notification or the Teams notification. Excuse me. Um, but yeah, so like the big risk here for is like the P0s fix merge without regression output plus pay review. Um, all these aren't super huge, but like basically, like I said before, we basically just want to make sure we have that output to see that everything's working correctly after the changes, and we're not actually regressing to a worse state. We want to keep raising the bar, not lowering it. Yeah, these are listed out here. I'll share this slide deck too, but it's all in this slide. I'll share this in the weekly recording like I normally do, because I don't want to go through and read all these. But they're here, and I've talked about them already. Just a recap. Yeah, so basically one thing you'll have to work on is this Pydantic JSON-B. When we get that figured out tomorrow, I need a little time to look at that and actually figure out what a good process is for that. But once we get that set up, and it's important that people follow the convention and they don't diverge. So that's like a medium risk, right? Like you go in and you make the fix, but you have a defined property that doesn't exist or it's named something differently than what was decided upon in the convention. Then it is, good thing is that tests will fail and code won't run because we'll actually be using strict typing. So those kind of things show up right away, but they can be frustrating if you're trying to work on it and you run into it a bunch. Yeah, I know you're still doing closeout work too. If you have open closeout work, prioritize that before hopping into this cleanup pass. And prioritize this closeout work that you're already working on until the 15th. And then this cleanup is really designed for the bridge period along with the reading on WFDOS. So yeah, we did this already, but this is a recap of what we touched on. So we walked through the slide 5, which was the jumpstart targets, and I'll share these slides with the recording and the weekly recordings channel. And that has the quick wins per pair that only take 30 minutes or so to fix. Just kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, with the self-serve going on. And then tomorrow, we'll meet for 30 minutes to an hour, but basically we're just going to talk about the Pydantic JSON-B. I'll probably just have instructions laid out for a convention and give them to you guys. We'll walk through it to make sure everyone understands it. And then as part of your fixes and your cleanup pass over the week, you'll do that. I want to share it early this week, though, so if there's any questions or someone can't get to it later because of work or school or finals, I want to give you the week to look over and understand and ask questions before I'm off. So yeah, I'll just share the whole slide deck rather than those individual slides for bullet 3. Yeah, then we'll wrap up. So on the Thursday, when we do a wrap up, each pair will confirm their bridge week priorities after doing the readings I just posted. Looking over the slide decks I'm going to post here probably within the next hour or so. And then just acknowledge the self-serve workflow. Just make sure you all understand that. And then Friday we'll do the kickoff for the bridge week. And basically, instead of this will be a kickoff, and I've pretty much created all the materials to send you guys off with. For the rest of the week, we're not going to do meetups until wrap up. We'll just do quick check-ins. So we'll still have the meetups. I'm not going to cancel them, but I'm not going to make slide decks. They'd be redundant at this point because we have things laid out. So I really want to use these going forward up until planning week. And that gives me time to do there's some work things I have to do before I wrap up for vacation as well. I'm getting the Wayfinder set up. I'm kind of waiting on some things from other staff, but I'm getting the Wayfinder infrastructure set up. I'm halfway through that, and then I'm setting up this finance front end for agent workflow for Ritu on the CFA Azure. So I did that a little bit over the weekend, but there's some more I got to do with that and work with her to get that set up. And I want you guys to kind of just practice the self-serve workflow. We'll get together. I'll still be there, but for the meetups the rest of this week. But then on Thursday we'll wrap up just kind of as a snapshot of where we are, what carries over into the bridge, and then Friday will be like a kickoff. But we already have the kickoff slides. Join for their outlook to see if there's any drift or things changed from between now and then, and make sure to clean that up. But yeah, that's it. This is our last week. How's everyone feeling?
Good.
Pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Go ahead.
oh, I just had a quick question. Because I was remembering I assigned myself an issue some like 2, 3 weeks ago. I remember talking to you about it, the backfill with JSwitch API.
Okay.
That for so since Brian and I don't have like a lot to like we do have some stuff to do, but not a lot. Should I also put that, or since we're getting the data from Borderplex, should I wait on that?
No, the backfill and the ingestion and processing, there's issues, and searching for issues and doing an audit and finding issues are completely fine and self-assigning. It's proactive. It takes initiative. You're more than willing to do that. In fact, I encourage doing that. But when you do the code review, just make sure you have the regression checks. And if it's someone's doing a review and maybe it's like eval harness or ingestion pipeline, kind of lay out what's going on because they might not be super familiar, so they know what to look for. Kind of point them to what to check out, like
Yes. Okay.
but yeah, please do that. Like if there's like, because there's like there's a lot of unassigned issues that I've opened up that I want to they're on my radar. I want to give it to you, and ideally having all those fixed for having an exemplar code base for the other agents to build from would be ideal, right? Like having all the bugs fixed, so that way we can point and say, here is a cookie cutter, follow this implementation exactly, and you'll end up where we want. Because if you notice from that image in the WFDOS, for each of the engines, like there's like college workforce, like college. I don't remember the names. I haven't memorized yet. But there's like 3 other engines that do essentially the same thing and have the same ingest process loop that JIE has. So basically, it's just different data structures, different tables, and different contexts for data, right? But essentially, the workflow is the same. So, yeah, having all that cleaned up and taking initiative to find issues and fix things is encouraged, especially if you have lighter workload or you just are enjoy doing it and want to dive deeper. Please do that. Yep. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.